Black Earth offers a full suite of humic solutions, from high-purity granules to powder, liquid, and soluble formulations, all powered by pure humulite. Trusted by growers worldwide from one of the world's rarest humulite reserves. Grow stronger with the power of Black Earth humulite. Learn more from Mind to Market by visiting blackearth.com.
I'm Sean Haney, and this is Real Ag on the Weekend. Let's get real and get connected with the week that was in Canadian agriculture. Real Ag on the Weekend starts now.
Hello and welcome to Real Ag on the Weekend. I'm Lyndsey Smith, your host for today's show. I fill in every once in a while when Sean Haney is away. And that is this week. He managed to take some time away with family, take some time off. So here I am hosting today's show. We've got so much to cover this week. I could probably almost do the entire show just on news, but don't worry, we'll switch it up a little. We've got some agronomy to cover. We've got some cool discussions on what does conservation actually mean. We'll hear from a farmer, rancher, and as I promised, we're going to cover the news. I did want to, before we hop to that, because there are several things to cover. I had the pleasure of being in Ottawa this week, and I was at the Canadian Agri-Food Policy Institute. They had a 2-day policy conference in Ottawa, really focused on risk. So the kinds of risk that Canadian agriculture is facing, how do we manage that risk? Are we ready? How do we rise to the occasion? Really a fascinating couple days of wonderful conversations, panels, and really just spending time in the room talking to different people, policymakers, heads of companies or organizations, and where we sort of land on risk. So fascinating discussions all around. One of the key things I think that I took away from the conference, and I would love your feedback on it. My email is lsmith@realagriculture.com, so drop me a line. But one of the key discussions, I think, I moderated a panel about if we, as Canadian agriculture, are really ready to rise to the challenge of the risks that are out there. Do our policies and our programs actually meet the moment? Do our rules, our laws, our regulatory framework meet the moment? And then, of course, there are the things we cannot control. And so through that conversation, one of the key points that came out for me was that realistically, there are aspects of the supply chain. So from the farmers, the processors, the grain companies, perhaps a food ingredient company, the exporters, all these different parts. And then we add the layer of, say, municipal, provincial, federal governments. They don't all talk to each other. And this was a key part that came up in many of these conversations, is that what suits the needs or what is needed by, or what one aspect of agriculture, so if it's the farm sector, what one sector needs or wants doesn't always necessarily get heard by, asked for, or discussed by other aspects of the supply chain. And it really became clear that communication, and I know I'm biased, I'm a communicator by trade, but that communication of wants, needs, ideas, etc., that sort of flow back and forth doesn't really happen. And that was, I think, a key part that was identified during this 2-day event. So very cool. If you'd like, head on over to realagriculture.com. We've got more coverage of that event. And of course, we cover policy and policy changes all the time there as well. As I update you on all these news stories I'm going to cover, that is where you can go for more details. So I'll bring you the high-level look, but if you want more details, you can always head on over to realagriculture.com. While you're there, you can also hit that subscribe button, and you can get all of these news stories delivered right to your email. So realagriculture.com/subscribe. All right, so first off, in case you missed it, Corteva, which smashed together some companies not that long ago, is now reversing that trend to a point. Corteva is going to spin off into 2 entities, its seed company and its crop protection business. So this is perhaps, as we talked about risk, a risk management move, putting the crop protection products and that R&D and that entire stream in its own company to be led by particular people in that space. And then, of course, the pioneer brands, the seed brands are all going to be in and of themselves their own company. This is perhaps for some people not a surprise, in that I think that this is one of those mergers that there were people that, really liked how the seed side ran and maybe wanted to see that continue. But as my colleague Calvin Hepner talked about, spinning off into the two, it really does mean that you can focus the efforts for each of these revenue streams, focus the R&D, and perhaps better ride out the risk and the riskier sort of environment that we're all in and that we're heading into. So that's fascinating. Another sort of decoupling, if you will, Maple Leaf Foods, and this one was finalized this week. So it wasn't announced this week, but Maple Leaf Foods is bringing back the Canada Packers brand. And this is another sort of splitting off from a vertically integrated company that raised the hogs, processed the hogs, and did the value add, the further processing. So Maple Leaf Foods announced that it would spin off Canada Packers into its own company. It does retain a minority stake, less than 20% ownership of Canada Packers, but Canada Packers will maintain the hogs, the barns, the processing, and Maple Leaf will focus on ready-made foods, packaged goods. Again, another split of potentially putting some of the risk to each of these value streams as opposed to managing it together. I do find it interesting. I do find it quite fascinating because I think, for a lot of years, maybe decades really, the push was for vertical integration, that, money could be saved, efficiencies had, you need to own the value chain. And this was sort of the gold standard. And yet here we see companies that have brought certain things together that are now piecing them out back into their own companies, potentially, maybe as a risk management tool, maybe, perhaps it is more quote unquote efficient to run a fully vertically integrated chain. But that doesn't necessarily mean that each point in the chain is being properly managed. It's a question, something definitely to think about. Exciting news for those of you who love the PV Mart brand. Now, not everyone is getting their PV Mart back immediately, or maybe even in the future. But our very own Amber Bell, our field editor, she has been following the PV Mart story and its resurgence, if you will. So you may remember a few weeks back, we did report that there was a company, a group of people that had formed a company that had bought PV Mart, the brand, that had plans to reopen stores. Now, we don't have a list for all of Canada, but we are at least getting indications that for Alberta, we will see stores reopen at Spruce Grove, Westlock, Camrose, and Lacombe. Now, does that mean that PV will reopen everywhere? No, but there are indications that there are longer-term plans to include Saskatchewan in the next tranche of reopenings once investors are found. So that's what PV Mart is telling us. Those of you who love PV Mart, there is potentially a return of a store in your area. Check it out. More details, again, RealAgriculture.com. Now, I don't have enough time before we have to go to a break here to fully unpack this discussion on farmland values. So we are going to take a quick break because Farm Credit Canada did release its numbers for the first half of 2025 of where farmland values are headed. And I will say, for the first time in perhaps quite a while, we are definitely starting to see a deceleration of the value of farmland in certain provinces. So where does your province stack up? That's what we're going to talk about right after this. Let's take a quick break.
Agritrade Equipment Expo, November 5th to 7th at Westerner Park in Red Deer. Discover the latest ag innovations, equipment, and technology. Get your tickets now at agra-trade.com.
If you're serious about agriculture, RealAg's got you covered.
For over 10 years, we've listened to and shared what producers have to say about everything from policy to agronomy from coast to coast.
Keep up with the latest in Canadian agriculture at RealAgriculture.com through daily newsletters and check out our YouTube channel.
Thanks for joining us in the RealAg community as we continue to cover and serve North American agriculture.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin, host of the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com. Throughout the year, on the Soybean School, we'll bring you timely agronomic video content from planting to harvest, from the latest agronomic research to the latest in production technology. Check out our massive video library on YouTube, RealAgriculture.com, or download the audio podcast versions wherever you get your podcasts. The Soybean School is brought to you by Mazik Seeds and Lalamon Plant Care.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
Welcome back to Real Ag on the Weekend. I am your host today, Lyndsey Smith. Glad to be joining you, and thank you so much for giving us a listen. While you are listening, would love it if you would give us a follow across social media, or if you've got feedback on today's show, my email, lsmith@realagriculture.com. Would love to hear from you. Love to know where you're listening from. It's really cool to be able to chat with you today. Okay, so as promised, before we went to the break, Farm Credit Canada has published its 2025 mid-year farm values report. Now, would love to know where you are, how you feel about this number, but on East and West, there's some really interesting trends. So the overall trend for early 2025, so the first half, was a 6% growth in the farmland value on average. But we all know that averages don't tell us the whole story. So what's key here is that Alberta posted just above the average at 6.6%. Saskatchewan hit 6% even, so the national average. Manitoba, though, was the big winner for the first half of 2025, posting an 11.2. The only other province that approached a 10% growth was New Brunswick at 9.4%. But here's where it gets perhaps a little interesting. BC and Ontario posted a goose egg, a no change, a 0. Now, in and of itself, that might not seem, I mean, it's only 6 months, it's spring, maybe not, I don't know how many actual transactions this was based off of, although we can maybe find out, but it definitely does show a slowing in the rate of growth. Now, the way Farm Credit Canada sort of presents this, they do give us, in this report anyway, and of course they will come out with their annual report, they do give us our average percent change from July to June, so the 12-month period where this report ends, and then they of course give us all of last year. So if you look at the difference between all of last year versus now, that's where you start to see a significant pullback in some of these numbers. So what did BC do in all of 2024? 11.3% growth. Now they're posting a goose egg for the first half. Ontario, only 3.1% for last year. Now again, a 0. Saskatchewan shows a bit of a slowing. So last year was 13.1%. So we've got 6% now. Alberta, 7.1 in 2024. For the first half of 2025, 6.6%. So definitely showing at least some indication that higher interest rates, lower profitability, thinner margins, lower crop prices are all playing a role here. But of course, farmland values aren't just about farm gate prices or our economic outlook. There's so much more that goes into demand, supply, etc. So it's not necessarily doom and gloom. And I know maybe some of you follow a couple farm economists that have said, we're headed for an absolute bust. I don't know if I subscribe to that sort of thinking, but we definitely are getting indications that there is a slowdown, at least in the rate of growth. Still growth. Nobody posted any negatives anyway. But a slowdown in the growth of farmland values. Okay. We're going to park that there for now. Let's hop to a snippet of my conversation with Bryan Gilvesy. He is the Chief Strategic Officer for ALUS. And I met with him this week in Ottawa at the CAPI event, the policy event. And after we discussed on stage, on the panel, risk management, I wanted to ask him about, because he's in the ecological services space, how agriculture has sort of lost ownership of this idea that farmers are in fact conservationists and stewards of the land, and that we can be that and still farm and still be profitable. In farming circles, the term conservationist or environmentalist, maybe stewardship of something, can sometimes have negative connotations, or this idea of, as you said, kicking any sort of agriculture or people off the land and leaving it as it is. Where do you think in the terminology we've sort of gone awry?
Well, I understand your sentiment, because before I joined this program, I was the same. I feel, and I've heard this from farmers across the country, we all feel the environment agenda is being pressed down upon us by people that don't understand our economy, don't understand our lives, don't understand how our communities work. That's offensive to a lot of people, right? And then the next level, if you feel that you're getting pressure that you're actually bad for the environment, boy, that's a pretty good way to disengage people that can provide more assistance to the natural environment than anybody else on the planet. Farmers, right? We have land, we have skills, we have energy. I think we're trying to change the conversation that this agenda around conservation began with fishers, hunters, and farmers years ago. It's moved away, but I think it's time to bring it home again. We are the productive side. We're productive people. Now, because we're the productive people, we're in the rarest space of conservation, right? We're solving environmental problems. So I think we're in a unique space in agriculture to be able to claim this agenda as ours.
What does that look like in practice? What are some of for those who maybe aren't aware of ALUS or what ALUS does, what does an ALUS project look like? What does it entail?
Technically, ALUS pays you as a farmer to produce ecosystem services. That's a really big fancy word. But what it means is you're going to plant things that at the end of the day maybe make more habitat for biodiversity. They maybe help filter water. They maybe help our communities become more resilient to the big rain events and things like that. They may involve helping our soils build more organic matter and hold more water from a rainfall event. So these are things that benefit people not on our lands or us, but benefit the broader community. They're technically called ecosystem services, but the key to all that is services get paid for, right? There's an emerging marketplace for these things that people of the planet require, and I think that farmers play a unique role, if they choose, to become part of this, what I call an emerging space or emerging marketplace.
What components are coming together now that are making this successful, that are making this work for the farmers that are taking part?
So the number one thing is this. We are a principles-based organization at ALUS. And the one thing that we've landed on, and we weren't solid on in the early years around 2007, 8, and 9, and that is that farmers would lead the program inside their own community. We are a very grassroots program, so farmers, you get to be selfish. You get to sit on a committee that decides what are the things that matter to your community, what are your priorities, and you can direct programming into those sorts of things. So it's not all tree planting. If you love grass and you're a native grassland area, we reward people for putting native grasslands or managing native grasslands. That's the sort of thing that ALUS can pay for. And it also allows our community partnership advisory committees to be extremely creative. There is a lot of flexibility in what programming gets delivered. But again, power goes to your community, your partnership advisory committee, and you get to do the right thing for you and your community, but that has global or national implications. You're making the world a better place to live.
All right, we've got to leave it there for now. That was Bryan Gilvesy with ALUS. I spoke with him in Ottawa this week at the CAPI Policy event. We are going to take a quick break here on RealAg on the weekend, and we'll be back with more. In fact, we're going to hear directly from a farmer and how their week has been right after this.
Hey sports fans, the RealAg Hockey Pool is back for the 2025-26 NHL season, brought to you by Cantera Seeds and Alliance Seed. Visit realagriculture.com/hockey to register your team and make your picks before October 10th. See you on the ice.
RealAg Radio is Canada's only daily radio show focused on agriculture. Get expert advice on Agronomic Monday. Tuesdays and Wednesdays will cover a broad range of issues. Thursday we'll hear from farmers across the country on the Farmer Rapid Fire. And we'll wrap things up Fridays with the RealAg Issues panel with Kelvin Hepner and Lyndsey Smith. Join us Monday through Friday at 4:30 Eastern. And don't forget about the replay at 7 in the morning on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Get all the information you need to keep your pulse crop healthy and profitable with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School is a free YouTube video series covering agronomy, research, and more across a host of different pulse crops. It's also available as an audio podcast wherever you download or stream your favorite podcast. Check us out on YouTube or visit RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School, brought to you by BSF Canada.
Welcome back to Real Ag on the Weekend. We go now to Sean Haney's conversation with Jocelyn Wasko out of East End, Saskatchewan.
What's going on the ranch this week? What are you up to?
It has been kind of a crazy, busy fall. We're still combining, which is not like us down here. Just chickpeas left, and they are sure taking their sweet time to dry down. So just kind of battling with that. But we've kind of moved on to cow stuff. So we're lucky that we have a crew that can kind of split up and go. So we've got one guy in the combine. We're moving cows home and getting ready for weaning and all things like preg checking, all the fall things that have to be done. We're building up some fences because we're actually going to seed some of the farm to grass next year to accommodate some of the growth that we're planning on the cow side. So yeah, just kind of your typical crazy fall stuff, trying to get some of the projects done, but also just dealing with this mountain of work that just doesn't seem to want to go away.
Yeah. So retaining some heifers, are we?
We are retaining heifers. We are buying bred heifers. We are buying cows.
Wow.
In expansion mode. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the market's definitely signaling that. It's been a crazy couple of years here.
Yeah, it has. And I mean, we almost needed to build back up after the years of drought, and we've been culling our herd pretty hard. So we've been slowly building back up, but then this year we were like, you know what, we need to just get this done. We need to be buying cows where we can. So we bought cows this spring as well. So we're going for it. We are kind of jumping all in. We're, like I said before, we're going to seed some of the farm to grass. I've dedicated 2026 to the year we cater to the cows. So I'm very excited.
Well, that's good. I like the excitement. So when I guess, what does the evaluation or the process look like if you're going to go out and buy bred cows? Are you what does that look like? Are you doing that at the auction mart? Are you doing that private sale with ranches that you know? Like, how does that work?
We're doing that private sales, ranches that we know, ideally a large sum of cows from one herd and local. So we like to kind of buy from programs that are similar to our own, just the retention's a little bit better. So no, we haven't done any auction market buying. It's been all private. And so far so good.
Kind of a fun process, though, to kind of sit down. I'm sure you and Travis sit down and try to sort this. Okay, what do we want this? What do we want the operation to look like? And what do we need to do for ourselves and the family? And just kind of do some goal setting. That's a pretty exciting time.
It is. And you know what? It's actually interesting you bring this up. Travis and I participated in a young rancher survey 10 years ago with Kathy Larson. Yeah. So then our 10 years later was just 2 months ago, and Lyndsey Henheffer interviewed us, and we got to review some of the answers we gave 10 years ago and what our goals were and what we kind of set our sights on for what our operation was going to look like in 10 years. So it was a really interesting way to kind of look back on where we wanted to be and now to see where we are. And then again, now we're kind of it seems like Travis and I are always like, okay, what's next? How can we build into something that's next? What's going to make us kind of more successful in this venture in the future? And we just kind of have always gone for it. And yeah, it was really interesting to reflect. And then again, like now that we're kind of going all in on the cows, which I don't think was ever like a strange thing for Travis and I to want to do. This has always been the goal. Mother Nature has always been the Achilles heel here, and now we're just going for it. It's exciting. I mean, I love being in this industry, and it's really fun to set these goals and try to achieve them.
Okay, so as you look back on those that 10-year plan that you just reviewed, what was the biggest like thread of learning that you were like, oh, that's interesting, or like, you know, oh, we hit on that, or boy, were we wrong there? Like, what was something you pulled out of it?
I think what I found the most interesting is that we had these really big, lofty goals 10 years ago, and we've accomplished them. Like, we kind of just set our sights and we got to work and we did them. And to be able to look back and re-answer these questions like, no, actually we did accomplish that. We have done that, and it was a success. Or, you know, there's some things that are a bit of a flop, but overall, yeah, it was really cool to just reflect on that. I don't think anything was a huge miss, because I think the biggest takeaway is that we didn't pass up very many opportunities. Yeah, it is a very valuable practice. If you have any type of resources, if anyone keeps any kind of records, go through them and just reflect and kind of see where you can go from there. It was a very worthwhile exercise for us. how
are the grass conditions?
Yeah, what a bizarre weather year, honestly. So we seeded into dust, and the whole spring was just gross. It rained in June quite a bit, so got things started. The grass kind of got a little bit of moisture there, and then we missed quite a few rains in July at the farm, but caught some here at the ranch. And then the life cycle of the farm, so all of the crops kind of were done. And then August, it was just rain. It just kept raining. We didn't get anything outrageous. There was areas that were saying oh, we've had 12 inches of rain. No, we didn't have that, but we had 5 inches of rain, which is a yearly rainfall down here. So the grass was phenomenal. I can't even explain what it was like to drive around this ranch in August, and it is lush and green, and cows have grass up to their bellies. It was just bizarre. So the grass held on. It still looks great. It has not rained since the rain in August, which is what it is. It's just kind of what this area does. It makes you think, yeah, that's it. The drought's going to be over. And then she's like, never mind. We're turning off the tap for 2 months.
Yeah, and remember, you're in East End, Saskatchewan, which is traditionally a very drought area. It is short grass country. It is not, the lush neighborhood of a Prince Albert that a Tim Alexkin would live in. That's easy street. This is different.
We have not seen grass like this in a long time, so it really helped to build up some reserve. All those fields that we have been so careful with, and we've had such low stocking rates on because of these multiple years of drought, they really thrived. So we grew tons of grass. Everything's good. Hopefully we'll get some fall moisture, because right now we're not going into the fall looking that awesome. But the way that we kind of run on a yearly rotational grazing around here, so it doesn't affect what we're going to do. We already had our grass saved for the fall. That was always saved for the fall. We already have grass saved for the winter. It's already saved for the winter kind of thing. But it really did make us not worry about that summer grass, which usually in August you're getting a little worried about things growing.
Well, I'm now going to have every rancher around Prince Albert sending me text messages that I said it was easy street. So, hey, Jocelyn, thanks so much for joining us here today. And again, congratulations on the expansion, and look forward to hearing more about it as time marches on.
We're going to leave it there just for now, take a quick break, and we'll be back with our last segment talking powdery mildew right here on Real Ag on the Weekend.
Want to stay on the leading edge of farm management? RealAgriculture.com features the Mind Your Farm Business podcast, brought to you by RBC Royal Bank. Find it at mindyourfarmbusiness.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Lyndsey Smith, host of The Agronomist, and I want to thank you for tuning in for over 200 episodes of our beloved little program. Join me Monday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube for our live and interactive agronomy Q&A. Each week, our guest panel will handle some of your toughest agronomic questions live, streaming on YouTube, Facebook, X, and RealAgriculture.com. Tune in Monday nights or go to RealAgriculture.com/agronomist and sign up for our email notifications and don't miss an episode.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is a video series that showcases the latest in canola research and production agronomy. Learn from some of the best at your own pace through quick and timely producer-focused videos available on our YouTube channel. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is the quickest way to keep up to date on all the latest in canola production. Boost your canola IQ with the Canola School, brought to you by BASF, and visit canolaschool.com.
Welcome back to Real Ag on the Weekend. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, at least for this weekend. Don't you worry, your regular host, Shaun Haney, will be back next weekend. We hop now to the most recent canola episode that we posted over on YouTube as well as canolaschool.com. This is a conversation Amber Bell and Keith Gabert had this week talking about what you may have noticed during harvest. A lot of dust, a lot of dust that's sticking to equipment, maybe even a dusty looking crop. It's probably, as we discover in this interview, powdery mildew. So, is it a concern for yield? Is it a concern for humans? Let's listen now.
I'm here today with Keith Gabert for this episode of Canola School, and we're going to be talking about powdery mildew and some of the other molds, random dusts that you may end up experiencing coming up as you're combining canola. So welcome, Keith. It's great to see you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we'll start off with powdery mildew because I've been hearing a lot about this. Talk to me a little bit about what it is and what some of the symptoms are.
So powdery mildew is a disease that canola can have. It likes to live on living tissue. It's just a white powder. It's well named. It likes relatively high relative humidity. Now, that doesn't mean that you needed a lot of rain. In fact, years like 2025, which we're in now, we've had some really nice high temperatures where I'm going to say we're touching 30 for 3 weeks now, almost every day. But we still have some dew in the morning and we still have some wet tissue in there. This particular fungus likes to grow under those conditions. And more importantly, it hasn't been washed off. In most areas of Alberta, from Calgary to Peace River, we haven't seen a significant rain event. This fungus has had 3 weeks to grow, make a little bit of powder, make a little bit more powder, actually make a little bit more powder. And we've, in a previous employment and now working with Alberta Canola, we get this kind of question, what is this dust? Almost every year, but it's rarely really widespread. So the unique thing about 2025 is that it's widespread, and it's based on some really nice warm temperatures that this fungus likes, combined with some moisture that we don't really believe was there, but it was. Causing it to create a lot of dust. It's not the same powdery mildew that's in peas, but you might as well think of it as the same. It's a white dust that's colonizing the plant. If there's a yield penalty, it would be because this dust is covering the green tissue. But we don't really see a yield penalty in canola. We typically sort of say that this is a neutral disease. It's just an annoying thing, like the swather in the background. Your windshield wipers don't really work on this dust. You end up with an inch of what looks like flour with this particular fungal disease. But we have some other ones that aren't white. So it's just one more thing that causes dust at harvest time.
So with the annoyance factor, it cakes on. Now, what does that take to wash it? Are you worried about bringing equipment between fields?
So I'm not aware that there's this is a pretty ubiquitous always present, could be anywhere disease. So we're not worried about the fact that you've got a swather covered with white dust moving from one field to another. I'm not aware that that's a concern of any kind, because this particular disease is everywhere and will pop up if you get good conditions for the disease. That hasn't necessarily been good conditions for the canola necessarily. But like I said, this one likes to grow on living tissue. So as the longer the season is and the longer the time period without a really hard rain to wash it off, the more you're likely to notice it. And it's often in small pockets where we'll have those conditions. And this year it happens to be across a couple of provinces that we're getting powdery mildew questions this year.
So does the fungus overwinter in the soil, or how does it proliferate?
I don't know. it overwinters as a small black sphere, a fungal body. It overwinters on any surface. It's a pretty tough disease. I'm not aware that there's any management strategies that a grower is going to employ. This is a disease that doesn't cause us too much issues, and is capable of arriving in a canola field anytime. One of the other diseases that you'll see on occasion is either a sooty mold or alternaria. And in that case, swather behind us is white. And in some cases, I joke that, you can't tell what make or model the guy's using, because halfway across the field, it's just a cloud of dust and the swather's white. If you're swathing after a hailstorm or a field that you've got a significant amount of dead canola in, alternaria will really set in, and it's got a black sooty mold sort of fungal powder, and you'll get almost the same results, but a different color. So there's lots of things that can cause dust. This just happens to be one of them, and no management strategies that we're aware of that the farmer needs to employ.
So no fungicides or anything for it?
Well, not for powdery mildew. There's no fungicides registered. Some of the sclerotinia fungicides can have activity on alternaria. We haven't seen that we've needed to manage alternaria in a big way in the last number of years. It was a significant problem when we grew Polish canola, but I'm kind of dating myself if I acknowledge that I did know what Polish canola was in the field, because we really don't see many acres of that now. So no management strategies, no fungicide applications controlling this dust. Just a whole lot of water when you go to wash it off when you come back to the yard.
I was going to say, any recommendations for washing it off the equipment afterwards?
So blowing it off dry seems to work a little bit better than trying to wash it off, because once you do get it wet, you got to put a lot of water to it. When I've watched guys try to clean this off, it doesn't come off the first little while that they're washing it down, and it leaves a ring around all the puddles in the yard after they wash the swather. So it's a pretty sticky, messy spore or dust to get off. It would be very similar to trying to get lime or flour off. Like you got to be pretty persistent to get rid of it.
Right. And any words of encouragement for growers that are going out and trying to wash it off of their combines right now?
Well, don't start with only a little bit of water in the tank. I don't know if that's a word of encouragement, but no, it's make sure your window's clean enough to see out of, and your radiator's clear. But other than that, this is one of those things that's just going to keep coming. So manage it as best you can, and have enough water handy when you do go to wash it off at the end of the season to get it all off.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Keith.
Big thank you to Keith and to Amber for bringing us that Canola School episode. One of the things that we do mention in the post that accompanies that, and that I spoke with Peter Johnson, our resident agronomist, about as well, is any time that you've got a really dusty crop, but especially when it is disease-based, regardless of which disease it is, it's not a great idea to be breathing in any of that dust. Certain fungal diseases worse than others, but in general, you really do need to protect those lungs, take care of yourself and take care of each other. Make sure that if you're working in any of these really dusty conditions, you're taking those precautions. It is so important to protect those lungs and, of course, everyone around you as well. So a good reminder that at harvest, whenever feasible and whenever possible, make sure you're wearing appropriate PPE. We don't want to be needlessly inhaling a whole bunch of mold or dust if we don't need to. All right, that wraps up today's RealAg on the weekend. We are so glad that you joined us for today's show. Again, I have been your host, Lyndsey Smith. It's a lot of fun to cover the show for Sean Haney, but he'll be back next week, of course. If you'd like to send us any feedback on today's show or any past shows, you can call that feedback line, 1-855-776-6147, or you can drop me an email, lsmith@realagriculture.com. Your regular host, Sean Haney, is at shaney, that's Haney, at realagriculture.com. We do love to hear from you. We are always open to story ideas, or perhaps you'd like us to cover something, look into a particular story for you or news item. So, you can, of course, also follow us across social media. We are at Real Agriculture. We have a YouTube channel. We are on X. We are on Facebook, TikTok. I know. And, of course, you can find our podcasts wherever you get your podcasts. Have a wonderful week. Thank you for listening. Cheers, everybody.